I'm a girl on fire, I'm not a victim, a girl on fire, I'll stand my ground, girl on fire, I've made a choice, I stand proud, I'm a girl on fire.
That's why I'm still a warrior. I have to keep fighting. But it feels like it's killing me.
And I choose to defend all that I hold dear. Independent and strong, you will not keep me down. You can't break me. I'm a girl on fire. I'm not a victim. A girl on fire. I'll stand my ground. Girl on fire. I've made a choice. I stand proud.
Speak out now.
Countless hours on the range, I am responsibly armed. I am your equal.
Lynette Oxley for GOSA Girls on Fire, 16 days of action for no violence against women and children. I'm here with Alison. I've known her for quite some time, and I know her as a very passionate person for things that she believes in. So welcome and thank you for talking to us.
Thank you, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So let's go back how you grew up. Maybe let's start, where did you grow up? What is your story?
So I grew up on the East Rand. I was born in Germiston and moved to Boksburg at a very young age. And sadly, my parents were divorced when I was very young. And I had a mum who had arthritis, and she actually had arthritis from when she was 25, and she was told she couldn't have any more children. So I hadn't been born yet, and when I was born, they kind of said we would probably both die at birth. Anyway, clearly you are. Here I am, clearly a miracle happened, and the sad thing was that the arthritis continued to creep. And my mom eventually died at age 51. She was bedridden, she was a skeleton, she weighed just over 40 kilograms, and she had rheumatoid arthritis, which had crippled her and debilitated her for a very long time.
It's a really bad disease. I know somebody else that's struggling with it right now.
Yeah.
And it's not just what you think it is, it's everything, it ruins you.
Well, you know, there's no cure for it. I think that's the big thing. So many years ago, we unfortunately weren't a wealthy family. We couldn't afford care, and I had to sort of step up to the plate, being the only girl in the family. And yeah, it was quite, look, I have daughters, and so I know that I would not like my daughters to go through that. So I have done my very best to eat healthy, do the best I can so that I don't get rheumatoid arthritis. I did get a test a few years ago, probably about 10 years ago, and I had the rheumatoid arthritis marker. And then I embarked on even a healthier lifestyle, including a lot more exercise and that kind of thing into the way that I lived my life. I'm now a vegan, and that has helped me tremendously. It's reduced the inflammation in my body, and this year I went for another test, and there's no more rheumatoid arthritis markers. It's an autoimmune disease, but I think if you have an autoimmune disease markers, they always are there, but nothing is, you know, they're not sort of raising their heads or anything like that.
It can happen or it can't happen.
Exactly. And I think it's really just a lifestyle choice more than anything else.
So that is our childhood, but that's not the only thing that happened to you. So obviously, what happened to your dad? Is he in the picture? Was he in the picture?
No. So my dad died in 2012. My parents were divorced. They lived sort of in the same province, but not close to each other. And he supported financially, but he had married again and had other children to support as well. Yeah, so, you know, life happens, and unfortunately I got kind of caught in the mix. I was, my high school career was dotted with having to come home at break times to give my mum a bathroom break, and then run back to school. Luckily we lived in the same road that the school was, and that was sort of my life from when I was 11, and then she died when I was 20. So she died when I was 20, and I think we were both relieved in our own ways. She prayed every day that she would go, and I prayed every day for a miracle. Because I didn't want her to go, I wanted a mom. And so one of us got our wish, and life continued.
But when you were 11, something happened to you.
Yeah, so
how did it happen, and could you see it coming as a child, or?
So, those were the 70s and the 80s, and things were very different back then. Kids were seen and not heard. There was a certain way of doing things. There was a certain way to behave when you were in adult company and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think in Afrikaans they say you can be heard but not seen. You can't be seen. People say Afrikaans saying, I can't remember it.
Be seen and not heard.
That's it. Yeah, that's right.
So no, exactly. So what happened is that there was a family member, my aunt, who married for a second time, and she married a man that was involved in the church. He sang in the choir, and for all intents and purposes, he was a good man, upstanding citizen. Absolutely. And it started with him boarding in our home. Yeah. So because we needed extra money, my mum had a room, my brothers shared a room, and that's where he boarded, and I had my own room. And this man took advantage of me. My mum was a crippled person, regardless of what she heard or didn't hear. Unfortunately, things happened in that bedroom of my brother's, and it was something that has taken me many, many years to work through, and to be able to sit here and talk about it and not burst into tears. Many hours, hundreds of thousands of rands of therapy, and so I think that what had happened is that it all came to a head. My aunt used to run sort of a play group, and in those years you could be a day mother. You could have 6 children in the play group. Yes. And one of them happened to be the son of a cousin of my aunt's, and a boy. And he decided to take advantage of this young boy as well. And
he was obviously a truly evil person.
And my aunt actually walked in on the act, and so it was obviously all of a, oh no, it's not what it looks like, it sounded like a movie really, I suppose. Yeah, it's not what it looks like. Well, actually it is exactly what it looks like. And that mother pressed charges, and the interesting part about it is I didn't know any of that happened until I was older, and it was explained to me when I told my mum that this man was doing the same thing to me. So it was explained to me that charges had been pressed. My aunt had a reputation and had to continue living in the area, although she'd filed for divorce from this man, and that please could the family go easy on her. And so, all things considered, a fine of a couple of R100 was levied on this man.
And he got out.
He was not in jail for any of that time. He got a fine, and in the newspaper article which covered the whole thing, it said, under no circumstances is he to be considered a paedophile.
But it didn't stop with you and this little boy.
No. So,
it never is.
Exactly.
Unfortunately.
So my mother is the oldest of her 4 siblings, and this was her younger sister, and she had 4 daughters, and all of those daughters are younger than me. In fact, the youngest ones, I changed their nappies. These were his children. And the interesting thing for me is when we were all visiting, and it was his chance to change nappies, he always came out with a smile on his face, and I never kind of knew what that meant. And I know now that having had children, and my husband has always been very supportive, and he changed nappies, but I can tell you one thing, he never came out with a smile on his face. So you've got to, my mind cast back, and I thought to myself, I wonder if he actually had done it to his own two daughters when they were very young. But look, there's no proof of that. There's absolutely, it is just what I remember seeing. And in fact, on the day that my grandfather took his own life, this man had been in a back room, and everybody was devastated and crying, and he came out with his daughter with a smile on his face, saying, "What is going on?" And we're all hysterical because we've just seen him take his own life. So that particular day was imprinted on my mind, and thought, one day I will understand what is going on here. And then, as I got older, I realized...
You were 12 at that stage when your grandfather took his own life.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, luckily my aunt divorced him, and so that didn't continue for very much longer. But the reality was that I had told my mum what had happened, and unfortunately, because we were reliant on the help of my aunt at certain times. I mean, I was 11. I didn't have a life really, but I did have to have a weekend off and not look after my mum. So I would then liaise with my aunt and say, "I know you've got 4 children, and anyway, why am I having this conversation with you? The parents, I'm not the parent here, I'm the child, but I need you to come and look after my mum while I go to a class party, or I go to a competition for drum majorettes, or I play a netball game." And what my mum said to me when I told her what had happened, she said, "You know what, your aunt is not going to help us anymore. It's likely that she won't believe us. It's likely that she will think that you've made up a story. Do you understand what you're saying, and are you 100% sure it's true?"
And you're not the first person that parents has done this. You had to grow up very quickly.
Absolutely.
In so many ways.
Absolutely. And afterwards, many of the therapists kind of said to me, "Do you feel shame about what happened?" And actually, no, I don't feel shame at all. I feel ashamed of my family, actually, that they didn't support me. I feel ashamed that I didn't actually have the courage to do what I knew I could, which was probably kick him in the nuts and run. But I chose at that time, I knew what the family dynamics were, and I knew what was at stake, and I knew I would be in trouble. And so I did nothing. I did nothing.
What went on 11-year-old Alison's mind when this happened to her? That's so digging. Yeah, and if you don't want to...
A very, very good question. I think that the most... I think the biggest question was, why me? And why this person? So it's a trusted person who's part of the church, who sings in the choir, who helps the priest, who collects money from people in the church. You know what, if you don't trust somebody like that, who can you trust? And it just gave me this feeling of hopelessness, because I thought, well, I've kind of done what I can. And in hindsight, I probably should have told my father sooner. But I also knew that that would be devastating, because he didn't have the money to find a nurse, because he would have just gone mad. I have no doubt that he would have gone mad. So look, it was a whole family dynamic, and I mean, I'd run away from home before because I didn't want to be doing this job of looking after my mother. I mean, at the end of the day, it was my father's job, wasn't it? Because it was for better or worse. And yes, they were divorced now, but I'm 11. Why is this
not your responsibility?
Exactly.
It's such a difficult thing for adults to deal with, looking after a sick family member.
It is.
It's nearly impossible. I've just had the situation where somebody took in somebody that's very ill. And I said to you, you won't be able to do it. There's just no ways that you can do it. You can't go on working or living because you are actually becoming the victim, and you cannot do that. And you are the victim in that situation because nobody should have actually expected an 11-year-old girl to look after him. We basically looked after her for about 9 years.
Yeah. So it was an interesting time of my life because I think I was emotionally intelligent at a very early age. I had to be. And what I think I'd worked out is that, you know what, my mum had done this when I was a kid, changed my nappies, taken me to the toilet, looked after me. And you know what, if this is the circle of life, it's now my turn to do that for my mother. Because unless a miracle happens, and we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it, the end, we know what the end is going to be. And so I did my best. Look, I'm not going to say that I was the perfect daughter or the perfect carer. There were times where I was so frustrated, I just cried and just thought, how can this be my life? And why is nobody helping me? I had brothers, but boys don't do that kind of thing.
No.
Unless they're a father, unless
they're younger or older than
they're older than me. Yeah, but so the one is that much older that there's almost like a bit of a generational type thing. So when I was in primary school, he was just finishing high school. When I was finishing high school, he'd finished university. So he was that far apart. And then I did have, they adopted a brother because she couldn't have any more kids. And then I came along. So there was an adopted brother, and we are 21 months apart. But yeah, he had problems of his own, as often unfortunately adopted children do. So he had problems of his own. And yeah, so unfortunately we were a little bit of a dysfunctional family.
I think the other ones, there's a lot of dysfunctional families. I think it happens more often than you actually think. Unfortunately. And, what happened when did you decided to speak out? You talked about a Facebook letter. Tell me a little bit about that.
So it was COVID, and this man had 2 daughters of his own, and one of them and I had become very close, in spite of the age gap. We were 14 years apart, but we had become very close over the years. And unfortunately he passed away. Unfortunately for them, lucky for me, and for all the other victims. And I felt such relief that on my birthday that year, so he passed away in early June, and my birthday is on the 7th of June, and I felt such relief and such a weight off of my shoulders that this man was no longer going to be able to torment me because I knew what he'd done, but moreover that he would not be able to hurt another person, because we only knew of 4 people that he'd hurt.
There's more.
There were definitely more. Without a doubt, there were more. And what this article spoke to was really to parents who have children that say, there's this person, there's this man, there's this woman, there's this boy, he's bullying me, he's hurting me, he's touching me, he's whatever it is. If your child comes to you, don't do what my mother did. Investigate it. Support them. Because I think it was the lack of support from my own mother
that was worse than the abuse.
That was almost worse than the abuse. That she wasn't giving me permission to speak out. She was in fact telling me to put a plaster over it, and that, you know what, if I waited long enough, I would either grow out of it, do something to him, or he would die.
Yeah.
So, you know.
How long did he abuse you?
4 years.
Okay.
4 years. So he was still abusing me when his youngest daughter was born, and I think she was born, so it was about 4 years. And it was in circumstances where there was always a little cupboard to go into, and the worst was actually in my grandfather's swimming pool. That was probably the worst, is that I would be swimming, and so I couldn't even go to my grandfather's house to swim anymore. I would go there to be a companion for him after school. I would ride my bicycle to his house. This was when I was in primary school, so I wasn't actually looking after my mom at that time. So we had help, but my dad fell on hard times, and the help that he had then fell away, and that's when I had to step up. But I would cycle to my grandfather's house, say, "Hi, Grandpa," and do whatever. His name was Oddie, and his full name was Otto, and I'd say, "Hi, Oddie," and spend the afternoon with him. And then his lodger would arrive home from work. And on a summer's day at 5 o'clock, it's really hot, you've got to have a swim. Well, those swims stopped very quickly.
So you still saw him after the abuse stopped. I'm sure you were glad that the abuse stopped, but
no, the abuse only stopped because my aunt and him got divorced, and he obviously moved away. That was the only reason that the abuse stopped.
Otherwise it would probably have gone on.
No, absolutely. And I know for a fact that the 2 older daughters who were from my aunt's first marriage were being abused as well.
Well, it's usually, I think, as I said, sometimes the family not supporting is worse, really, as bad as abuse itself.
Absolutely. Now, not being able to speak out about it, my aunt and my mom do have brothers, and I know that these brothers would have taken this man to task as well, but not being able to speak out about it, really. So the main reason I decided to speak out when this man died was because of the amount of relief that I felt. And I put a Facebook post up. And do you know what the husband of my cousin, his daughter, did? He phoned my husband and said, "Please ask your wife to take the post down." But I didn't know names, so people who read it on Facebook, it could have been about anybody. But he phoned and said, they haven't even buried their father yet. Please ask her to take the post down. And my husband said, "Okay, so let me understand this. This man abused my wife. She's still in trauma. Your wife has just lost her father, who's a pedophile, and you're asking me to support you and not my own wife. Why don't you support your wife and I'll support my wife? Thanks, I'm going to go and play golf now. Goodbye." And put the phone down. And I was extremely proud of my husband also for standing up to him. And the result actually of what happened then was that she literally hasn't spoken to me since.
And that is sad, because she's obviously got some monsters that she's dealing with.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. So I'm not a compassionate person. I realized he was a father to them. But what wasn't being heard was the story. They're my younger cousins by 14 and 20 years. How was their story? How was I supposed to say, "Oh, shame, you've just lost your dad"? I know, my dad died too. Shame. When they were like, "Well, he abused you, get over it." Seriously?
Yeah.
And so they weren't open to kind of seeing my side. And the younger of the sisters, I said, "You've got a daughter. You need to keep an eye on your daughter with your own father." And by her own admittance, she said, there's not a single circumstance where that daughter and her father are in the same room. So that was admitting that she supported me, but didn't.
Isn't that immensely sad? Because obviously, as I said, they are living with those monsters. And yes, you have to look at it from your point of view, but he's deeply influenced other people's lives as well, including his own daughters.
No, absolutely.
So after you spoke up, was that part of your healing? And has it been a long road? Are you still dealing with the trauma? How do you...
So you know, how
did you do it?
How does one deal with that is what I used to ask myself. And then what I realized is that actually there was I didn't feel any shame about what he'd done. Because at 11, 11 in today's times is very different from the innocent 11s we were then. Let me tell you.
No, very, very different.
Absolutely.
We sort of come from the same era, and it was a different time.
Exactly. And the thing that I couldn't understand is that, whether I'm allowed to say this or not, but I was a late developer. I mean, I only came into womanhood when I was 15, 16.
That is right, yeah.
At 11, what is the appeal to a grown man?
I could never understand that. That is unfortunately, I think if we could answer that question, we answer so much, but it happens so often.
Absolutely.
And it's been swept underneath the rug so often, and that is what's worse, is because those people are empowered by people not speaking up.
And I think that was also the driver, is that I was at the point where I kind of said, you know what, I'm in my 50s, why do I not have the courage to say to my family, actually, you should all be supporting me and not telling me to keep quiet? I mean, my aunt, when she hears this interview, probably will never speak to me again. If she ever hears this interview, she will probably never speak to me again. But we've had a strained relationship since that article was written. But she was the first person to WhatsApp us and say, oh, thank goodness he's dead. But she is supporting her own two daughters and saying, oh yes, that Alison, geez, she's another story. And so I just got to the point where I thought, you know what, not speaking up is tougher than speaking up. Why don't I take the step to empowering others to do the same?
Absolutely.
And it's given me such a sense of peace doing that. And I think that has been part of the healing, that you don't realize the peace that you will encounter once you've spoken up about it. I know that I felt nervous to do it because I kind of thought, well, what will people think? But by the time you're 50, you're kind of going, really? I don't care what you think. What I do care is that I struggle and I've been a difficult person to live with in certain circumstances when the terror of what has happened influences my family life, and I didn't want that anymore. So I looked for help. I've been to a lot of therapy, and I've taken that step, and I think I've kind of got on top of it now. I'm really feeling confident that this video or this interview will encourage women who possibly are thinking, well, how will speaking up help? And I can't explain it to you. Once you've spoken out, you will realize the peace that comes with it, and you will feel liberated, actually, completely liberated, that you don't have to keep this, and nobody's going to think any less of you, actually.
Absolutely.
Nobody's going to think any less of you. And I think that that's part of it, is that, that people will go, oh, well, she's damaged goods. Well, I've got 2 kids, I'm damaged goods anyway, so.
It's a dog companion that was with you since the first time it happened to you. It's something that walks with you, and if you try and hide it, it's still there. It's always there, and you have to actually deal with that that companion.
No, absolutely. And I wish I had done it sooner, because I think also life at home for my family would have been better, because what happens is there are triggers. There are things that trigger sort of anger and emotions that you don't know how to cope with, and you expect your family to be able to cope with them, and they just come out of nowhere. Whereas life, since I looked for help, since I liberated myself by writing about it, those triggers aren't there anymore. When I do get triggered, I'm like, so glad that I don't react like I used to, because I've now spoken up about it. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to add before I'm going to ask you to just give a message for everybody out there, from the 11-year-old girl that's keeping quiet to a woman that might have been in the 60s or 70s and haven't spoken up, and as I said, that dog companion is still with that person?
Absolutely. Said everything and taken up probably more time than I should have.
No. So a message out there, what would you say for the 16 days of, and we're saying it's action, it's not activism. Saying, do not rape me, don't do it. Activism doesn't help. No. You have to do something, and that's why we call it 16 days of action.
So I think if I knew then what I knew now, or what I know now, I would say that definitely, if you have children, regardless of whether they're boys or girls, equip them with an action plan if they encounter this sort of situation. And you can do it in a fun way. Let them watch Miss Congeniality, where she goes on stage and she has a little scenario of hit him in the rear, hit him in the nuts, stand on his instep, punch him in the nose. I would say that sort of thing. And don't be afraid. Don't feel like you will be shocked into not using what you know. So I would empower that, empower my children with that. I've sent my daughters on that kind of a course, so they know exactly what to do. And also go to a trusted person and tell them what has happened. And if that person, for whatever reason, doesn't take action or doesn't help, go to the next person until somebody listens. Because I didn't do that, and you don't want to be where I have been for the last 40 years.
Thank you.